What's up, guys? Welcome to Lodi, California. This is a new property that I just picked up as an actual subject to, and it wasn't even on my radar to do that, but I'm glad I landed it. I'm gonna tell you guys exactly how I did this. In fact, I think this is probably one of the easiest ways to pick up a subject to property, when in fact, on accident, I picked it up as a midterm rental as a co-hosting property. So check this out. This is one of my favorite things about this house. How do you expect children to learn how to read if they can't even fit in the building?
What is this? A center for ants?
We'll get into this stuff in a minute. Check this out. So one of the easiest ways that I can tell you guys right now how to pick up a property is literally, and this is what I did, is I looked on the MLS. You can go to Zillow, you can go to Redfin. Any properties that are sitting for more than 60 days, you can actually just literally call the agent and say, hey, are you interested, or is the owner interested in selling that property as subject to? In my situation, I actually asked the owner if they were interested in running this as an Airbnb. And as you guys can see, this property is probably one of the coolest Airbnb properties that I actually have. And I think that for me in that situation, it was literally just a phone call. I asked the realtor three things. Number one, is the owner interested in Airbnb? In fact, they had actually already talked about it. Number two, I ran numbers ahead of time, and I'll break this down a little bit. I was actually super understanding what this market is actually bringing in. And number three, the family, they were gonna lose this property. It was already listed for more than 60 days, 70 days. They were actually getting ready to close out. And what I mean by that is they're listed with an agent for typically 90 days and it'll fall off the actual market. And they would have to renew again. So they were getting to that point when this is getting ready to be delisted. And that's when I came to them and said, hey, here's how I can help you guys. Here's what the numbers look like. Have you ever thought about running this as an Airbnb? I could property manage this for you. It's exactly what I said. Anyway, we set up a meeting, and I'll talk about that here in a second. Let me tell you guys this. Actually, yeah, you need to learn how to run numbers, and let me tell you why.
Numbers!
So running numbers is going to be extremely important, and let me tell you why. And you have to get good at this. I use a company called Mashvisor, and Mashvisor will actually break down short-term rental numbers, it'll break down mid-term rental numbers, and it'll actually allow you to see every single property that's in that specific market near that address. It'll show you all their entire numbers for the last year. And this was critical for me because I was able to get on a phone call with the owner and the real estate agent, and I broke down exactly how much they would potentially earn on this property. In fact, this is as a short-term rental would earn around $8,000 per month. If the owner that had this property initially, they would only be able to rent this place for about $2,500. So you see the difference between $2,500 and $8,000. So the family would actually cash flow probably around $3,000 to $4,000 by renting this property with me as a co-host. So it's one of the most important things when you're dealing with folks is learn how to run numbers.
He's running numbers. He's running numbers.
In fact, that's what I use to do it. Mashvisor will break down your short-term numbers, and it'll actually break down your mid-term rental numbers, which is really cool. There's not any other software besides Price Labs that is doing something very similar to this. So if you're wanting to property manage for people, as I mentioned in this video before, this is literally the easiest way to start making money in real estate without actually owning any property. In fact, I think the biggest opportunities for people right now that don't have a lot of money to invest is property management. What I mean by that is you can't actually call it property management. You have to call it co-hosting. And co-hosting is essentially property management. And what you're able to do is pick somebody's property up just like this, and you'd be able to manage it for a fee. And typically I charge 25 to 30% depending on what that is. So this is where the opportunity is at, but you have to know how to run your numbers. You got to know how to communicate with the owners of these properties. And you definitely have to be able to sell a story to the real estate agent on why they're going to potentially be able to help you in the long run. You can end up giving them like a commission fee or something of some nature to help you connect with the actual owner. But real estate agents can be very helpful in building this specific property management or co-hosting model. Oh, you're here. All right, that actually brings me into the backstory of the owners, why they actually bought this property. In fact, this was their dream home. They lived in Livermore, California. There's probably gonna be a map popping up right now. Mike, I hope you can do this, buddy. A map popping up, and it's gonna show Lodi, and it's gonna show Livermore. And in fact, in the Central Valley, that drive is freaking horrendous, especially during peak hours, which is about 7 a.m. to right around about 9 a.m. in the morning, typically when most people go to work. In fact, the owners of this property, when they first purchased it, they did not think about that commute time. So they bought their dream home and didn't realize that the commute was gonna be as bad as it is. And in fact, in California, you guys, that commute, which is about 40 miles, is gonna take you round trip in a day, probably 2 to 6 hours per, did I just say 2 to 6 hours? About 2.5 to 3 hours each way, which is a lot. And that's 6 hours a day. You do that through the math. 6 times 5 is 30. Did you guys see that? There's like literally numbers and bubbles and shit coming out of my head. I can't do math. What am I talking about? I can't do math. Anyway, you guys get the gist. The owners own a design company in Livermore, California. And as you guys are gonna look at this property, you're gonna see, wow, it's really awesomely designed. I'm gonna break into that. But they didn't realize, again, how big that commute was and how much time it actually took. And they realized that they can't be in Lodi anymore because they do have to commute back and forth. So they decided, after having this property for about 6 months, that they wanted to move back to Livermore. In fact, that's where I came in. I actually ended up co-hosting, as I talked about before, where actually I bring this property on as a co-host. I talked to the family, and they were totally cool with me co-hosting this place. But they had to put in about 35 to 40K to furnish this place. So they put in 35 to 40K, and you guys are gonna see in these photos. This place is freaking amazing. In fact, I would live here if it wasn't haunted. I'm just kidding, it's not haunted. I didn't do that right now, like that just did it on its own. But seriously, you guys, this house is really cool. It was built in 1904. In fact, as you see it, it's one of those properties that actually feels better in person than it does in pictures. The pictures just don't do it justice. And even as you're watching these B-rolls, it's just way cooler in person. But again, that family just didn't realize how long of a distance that was gonna take. They spent their life savings on this dream home and didn't realize like what was going on. So that's kind of the backstory into this whole project and this whole piece that I picked up as a co-hosting property. All right, so we actually ended up listing this property for the owners as an Airbnb for about 2 months. And in those 2 months, they probably did, and I don't have the exact numbers, but I will potentially flash them on here at some point. The first month was about $6,000, and the second month was about 7K. After only 2 months of listing, the family decided that they wanted to just sell the property again. After furnishing this entire place, spending 35 G's to get this together, they were just like, we want to buy our own property. We don't want to have this property anymore, even though we love it. And it is cash flowing as an Airbnb. It's just not for us. We don't want to do this anymore. So the family went and spent 35 grand to get this place furnished. In fact, I think it was actually a little bit more, 40K. Had it listed for 2 months, made some pretty decent cash on it, and then decided like, we're just not going to do this anymore because at the end of the day, we want to buy another property. We don't want to have this property anymore. So they listed this home again as an Airbnb, and right as they decided to get rid of this property, there was a booking that came in, and it was a midterm rental for $10,000, and they said no to it, which I don't know why somebody would say no to 10 grand, but
they want 10 grand.
That being said, they listed the home on the MLS market with the same real estate agent that I had talked to before. Long story short, that property sat on the market, this specific property that I'm in right now, sat on the market for another 2.5 months, and it wasn't selling. And as you guys notice, this property is super freaking amazing, but the problem with it is it's right on the edge of a really nice neighborhood and a really shitty neighborhood. So you're kind of like right at the very edge of that. And I think that appeal wasn't for the average everyday person in this market. It was the best home in a market that was, or in an area that isn't necessarily the greatest. So this property was sitting on the market for 2 months, like I was talking about a minute ago. It was getting ready to be delisted again. The family, I reached out to the owner and I just said, hey, I know that you guys are having problems selling this house. How can I help you? As you guys are watching this right now, you probably heard of Pace Morby, who's like the genius behind creative financing. Creative financing, I thought, was probably the most difficult thing to do. In fact, I never thought that I'd be able to get a creative financing deal because I don't know anything about it. Long story short, to make a long story even longer, wait, what? Is that? Okay. What I'm trying to say right now is creative financing is not as difficult as I thought. The owners, they had a huge problem. What was the problem? Is that they needed to buy another property as they were actually staying with their grandparents in Livermore.
Mom! The meatloaf!
This house has been vacant for many months. They couldn't sell it, right? Remember? So they were paying literally $3,500 a month to have a vacant property that they couldn't sell. So I called them and I just said, hey, how can I help you guys buy another property? What kind of situation can I help you guys with? Like, what do you guys need? Because I'm willing to take this property over. Not to buy it though, but to subject to it. They didn't know anything about subject to. I didn't know anything about subject to, but I know that just like many entrepreneurs, you just figure shit out as you go. And that's exactly where my mindset was, is how do I solve the problem for these owners? How can I alleviate those issues? How can I help them go and do something else with potential cash? So the initial investment is they wanted $120,000 for this property in cash up front. And this home was listed for $745,000. And for me, that was just way too much money. I couldn't do it.
No deal!
So I went back to them and said, hey, I really wish I could do this for you guys, but unfortunately, I just can't. In fact, I think the maximum amount that I could do is right around $60,000 for you guys to pick this property up. And with subject to properties, you have to give a certain amount to somebody, or you can give a little bit or a lot. It really just depends on the situation. The family only needed $60,000 to be able to put that money down on another home. So they agreed to that. Catch here. In order for me to pick up this property, I asked them if they can leave all the furniture so I can just like literally pick this property and go. And guess what they agreed to? To leave the furniture here. So that was a huge, huge selling point for me, because for me to, again, to be able to furnish this place, and you guys are looking at it, it's freaking amazing. They did an awesome job. An interior designer put this entire property together. They paid over 40 grand to put everything in this place. You know, all the furniture, the tables, chairs, everything is super, super geared towards this property. And I essentially, I really, if you think about it, only picked up this property for around 20K, specifically because of them furnishing that. So if you take all the furnishings out, I picked up the property essentially for 20 grand. So we were able to land a deal. We negotiated terms. I'm not paying any interest on this house at all. I was able just to put the 60K down. All the furnishings came with the house. Everything stayed under their name. I did get an attorney to help me with the legal documents on situating this place together, but this is essentially a SubTo MTR, which I think is probably the best strategy that you could potentially get into.
The real reason Jesse bought this house is for the lemons.
The lemons in this toilet paper that's unused. This is the biggest toilet paper roll I've ever seen in my life, by the way.
One might say it's a paper towel roll.
Oh, is that what it is? I'm gonna break down the terms for you guys. This home, they owed $500,000 on it, literally almost to the dot, and they had a HELOC. They actually took out a HELOC on this loan, which was $75,000. So all in, I paid $575,000 for this house plus the 60K. So if I was to do the math on that, Micah, what the hell is the math on that? Dude, we don't know math at all. So it's probably like somewhere right around, and I'm freaking guessing right now. I hate this. I know somebody's gonna comment on this and say, dude, you're not as smart as you think you are.
Are you dumb? No!
What the fuck is it? $635,000. If we're wrong, please write a note down below and tell us how dumb we are. Okay, so I actually ended up picking up this property for $635,000. If we're correct on our math, the home is actually valued around $740,000. So I'm literally walking into $100,000 in potential. The frick is the word for that?
Equity.
Equity. That beautiful word, equity, that people talk about all the time, which it doesn't mean anything. Equity is just air. I believe that there's no such thing as equity unless you sell a property, right? So I'm actually walking into $100,000 in equity. So here's why I want to break down the numbers for you guys. So the mortgage principal and interest on this is $3,000 a month, and that HELOC that we have is $75K, and I pay $350 for that a month. So all in all, I'm paying right around, I'm going to say right around $4K a month for this property. That's with the water, sewer, garbage, electrical, the principal, interest, the HELOC, all that stuff. I have this property rented for $8K. In fact, the guests just left. They were here for 2 months. As I mentioned before, this property rented as I was acquiring it. So we got a 2-month midterm rental in here for $8K each month. So I'm cash flowing right around $4,000 a month on this property right now. Yeah, this is the property. This is what I was able to make on it. I've already started cash flowing it, but unfortunately, as I acquired this property, we had a crazy rainstorm in California, and the roof caved, not only in this room that I'm in right now, but also over the garage. So
What if the roof caves in?
that was the universe saying, hey, we gave you too good of a deal and we're gonna collapse your ceilings. So fortunately, unfortunately, I landed this beautiful home. I'm super stoked to have it. And all it was me making a freaking phone call. And everybody that's watching this right now, if you don't have any money to buy into real estate or you don't have the funds to do so, just start picking up the phone, start making cold calls to the agencies, start making calls to real estate listings on Zillow or Redfin that have been sitting for more than 60 days at a time. You have a tremendous opportunity there, as we talked about before. So I'm glad you guys stayed with me this whole time. If you have any other questions, leave a comment down below. If you think my freaking math sucks, leave a comment down below. And please make sure you like and subscribe to my page because this helps with the algorithm. In fact, this keeps me wanting to make more videos, so do me that solid. Leave a like, subscribe, hit the little bell sign up top, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.